Hello again, everybody. Welcome to yet another edition of Journey Through Sports and Life. The football season is underway, and last couple of weeks we've been sharing with you all kinds of football as we get ready for the brand new season here in 2024. Who's going to win the Super Bowl? Well, I tell you what, we'll find out. I'm Scott, the ladies alongside, the M&M twins as they call them, Marnie and Marjorie. And how about who's going to win the Super Bowl this year? What do you think?
Well, I think the Super Bowl will be won by Buffalo.
By Buffalo?
Yes.
The Bills?
Yes.
How about that? Marnie?
Well, when I was in Canton a few weeks ago, I asked Coach Vermeil who he thought he was gonna win the game, and he's convinced that it's probably gonna be the Chiefs have a very good chance, the 49ers, maybe Philadelphia, we'll see.
Baltimore.
But he seemed to think that the Chiefs have
What was
a
that
really
last
good
team?
shot of getting back there.
That last team, I heard you say the Chiefs, and then the last one you just mentioned?
That team in Philadelphia.
And for those of you that might be first-time viewers or listeners, Marnie's grandfather was the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles back in the day, over 40 years ago. But, he and her mom, general manager, the only female general manager in the history of the NFL to this day. So pretty good heritage of sorts, nice legacy.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, Marnie, why don't you pick it up from this point and tell us about our special football player that is going to join us here today, our special guest, because he is your guest.
Well, we are really excited to have a great friend of mine and an incredible athlete, an incredible college athlete, and then a great career in the NFL. And then now our guest, Liffort Hobley, also is the president of the NFL alumni for the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and is also a wonderful grandfather. So those are things that I love to share about our guests, that they're very involved in their family and their community after their career. So thank you, Liffort, for joining us today. We're really excited to have you.
And a great community, I might add.
Wonderful. Thank you guys for having me.
Well, and tell us about the community that you live in today. I've just given her a rough time.
I live in Texas. I left Miami many years ago, and I basically decided on Fort Worth, Texas as a home base back in 2001. I was working overseas for a couple of years and then decided to move back to the States to be closer to the family, closer to my kids, and get an opportunity to watch my kids grow up and then, of course, finish college and become parents themselves, which, of course, my daughter has two wonderful children. And I also have a son a late son that had a wonderful daughter who's my granddaughter. Not only a grandfather, but a great-grandfather. I have two beautiful great-granddaughters as well.
Great-grandfather, my goodness gracious.
Hopefully maybe a great-grandson in February. We'll see how that goes. And it's been wonderful being here in Fort Worth. And Scott, you and I have been teamed up on multiple events over the years through the Fort Worth Can Academy.
You got it.
Other nonprofit organizations that you and I teamed up to work with over the years here in Fort Worth. Over the past 23 years I've been here.
Well, I tell you what, you just jumped in and shared something I was going to share with you and tell the audience. This is a guy that does a lot of nonprofit things. That's how I met him along the way. It was not as a football player. Certainly knew who he was as a football player when I was back covering as a sports anchor. But I've gotten to meet you as, in the nonprofit sector that you've done here in the last, it has been 20 years. That's true. And just one of the really good guys. So we're delighted to welcome you, Liffort. You're a good man and a good friend to us all. But and thanks for being here in the great state of Texas as well, huh?
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, we're delighted to have you here. Thanks so much. Marnie, you want to kick it off since you officially invited?
Yeah,
go for it.
Last guest that we had last week, he was telling us a story about how when I mentioned your name, he said, Liffort Hobley, and then he was talking about your game in Miami. So I think that people love to hear about that game. So will you, we'll jump ahead from college and go right to the pros. Tell us about that game in Miami, which is a legendary game, and you had such a big role in it.
Well, I tell you what, it was one of those times in your career when you had to make a decision, even though you were basically struggling a little bit as a young player to make teams in the NFL. And I made the team with the Miami Dolphins after being cut multiple times in a 2-year period from 85 to 87. Becoming a Dolphin player was important to me, and getting to make that team and moving into a role where it was going to benefit me and benefit the team. So I had to make a decision. So I made a decision across the picket line and go back and play during the strike season, and ended up getting to training camp on time. The week before, I tried to make it before the first strike game, but I was a couple of days too late, so they wouldn't accept me to come back. They told me I had to come back the next week. So I did. I followed up and I came back and I sat down with Coach Don Shula. And, he said, is this something you sure you want to do? And I said, Coach, I came here to work. I came here to play. I came to help basically take care of my family and my responsibilities as a father and a husband. So making that decision was based on family. It wasn't based on selfishness. It was based on my decision to do things for me and my family at the time. So going into the week of the Kansas City Chiefs games, we actually, I wasn't actually set as a starter until Wednesday of that week. And then, of course, I ended up starting in the game, scored a touchdown on a fumble recovery, which was the first touchdown in Joe Robbie Stadium back then. And then, of course, had 2 interceptions and about 10 tackles. So I was player of the week for that week. And then, of course, the following week, all of my teammates were able to come back because the strike ended. And we went on to have a decent season, but we didn't make the playoffs, but we actually had a pretty decent season, winning 9 games that year.
That is a great story. And I know you were sharing with us off the air about how a fan had reached out to you. And this is one of the things that I love about you, Liffort, is that you have made yourself accessible to giving back. And we always talk about how athletes, definitely are the leaders when it comes to giving back. So what is it that makes you feel so excited about giving back to others, or to responding to your fans and showing them the love that they show you?
Well, I tell you what, growing up in a town, Shreveport, Louisiana, and having a lot of influencers in my life as a child, from in sports and outside of sports, teachers, just people on the police force, of course, then, of course, having access to families outside of my family that cared just as much about me as my parents did. That was the important part, having role models in your life throughout your life. That actually basically amplified things that I do today are related to the relationships I built over the years as a young man. Going to work with my mother, basically that was one of the relationships I built with the family she worked for in the florist market, where they were a wholesaler, which gave me an opportunity to learn more about plants and things of that nature, believe it or not. Kind of a nerd when it comes to those kind of things, plants, botany. I actually took a few botany courses at LSU during my college career, and learn a lot more about plants and plant life. And then, of course, trees and all these different types of things that are important to our definitely environment. So moving forward to LSU and having the other influence of former players from the community I grew up in as alumni, working for them during the summer and learning how businesses are run, and also how they develop an organization that grows within a small town. And then, of course, moving on to the NFL, getting the opportunity not only to play for the Dolphins, but to work for the Dolphins after my career was over, directly off the field into the front office.
So, Liffort,
which was an amazing journey.
Yeah, I would like to hear more about that. But before we do, I'd like to go backward a little bit. And could you tell us a little bit about how you first got involved with football, when you first started playing, about your family support, life at home? How did that lead you to where you ended up?
Well, growing up in Shreveport, there was very few things you could do. You could work, you can get in trouble, hanging out with the wrong crowd. You could actually participate in sports because in our little small neighborhood, we had access to a park and recreation area, which was called Shreveport Parks and Recreation, Princess Park. That's where all of the young men and women congregated together. And to this day, until last year, they would actually get together every Labor Day. I've never been to one of the Labor Day events because I was always in training camp or in college. So they would get together and revisit the old neighborhood because our old neighborhood's no longer a neighborhood. For 40 years, it hasn't been a neighborhood. But over the years, they would all come back and get together. All of these families that moved away, coming back from Texas, from Houston, from Dallas, and other cities to collaborate just to get together to see each other again. Wow. That went on for years. Last year, like I said, was the first time they weren't able to do it because of an incident that happened in another area of Shreveport, basically that caused the mayor and the city representative to say no to them getting together. And a big crowd of people that, basically we're having some issues in Shreveport that we can definitely talk about at a later date. But I think going back home for me, basically to help actually redevelop our city to where it should be, the things that I was had access to, football, baseball, basketball, track, and then to actually participate in all of those different sport environments taught me a lot of things. It actually taught me how to be a gentleman, how to be a sportsman, and also the coaching that I received from not just guys that were coaches outside of their jobs, but young men that were coaching from the high school level, and also basically young men that actually participated in high school sports were our coaches. My baseball coach was a high school baseball player.
Oh,
My
wow.
football coach was a former high school football player that lived in the community growing up as a little boy in Pee Wee League. And then to move into junior high school, my junior high school coach was a former LSU Tiger and a former NFL player. Then, of course, moving into high school, having my high school coach, Jerry Burden, as a former college All-American at Northwest State, and, of course, a former San Francisco 49er. So the influence was always there in my life as a young man, and I thank God took advantage of every step of the way.
I tell you what, I got a big charge out of when you started all that you just shared with us. Your trifecta at the beginning. What did you do? Sports, school, and get in trouble.
Exactly. And then, of course, you have your high school, junior high, elementary school teachers that you remember, like Edward Caesar, who was my elementary school teacher that I remembered from 4th grade through 6th grade. And then, of course, going on to junior high school, where that became the big part of where segregation began in Shreveport.
Right. Well,
and then, of course, having coaches that were at the junior high school level that were college, of course, former college football players, and Coach Jackie Mays and Coach Richard Gerald. And those guys basically amplified the determination of how I pursued my career or how I treated my, of course, education. You weren't going to play for them if you were not at least a C+ student. If you were struggling, you were not going to play for any of my coaches. They definitely made sure that you were getting the grades, going to class, respecting your teachers. And then, of course, the teachers that I recall and growing up, they were all on board with, hey, you're a great athlete. You can go a long way, but you're not going to embarrass us. When you get to college, you're going to do the things that are necessary to do what you have to do to get the grades that you need to be successful.
Right. Right. Makes all the sense in the world. Well, you certainly did the sports. You certainly did the school, the education, and forget the trouble. You've turned into an incredible difference maker in the lives of so many kids in this world that need a helping hand. So thank you for all that you continue to do on that. Marjorie, go for it.
Oh, I deeply appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, so how did you pick football? It sounds like you were quite an athlete all around.
Football sort of picked me. I had more scholarship offers in football. I had quite a few in basketball, small colleges, and then of course baseball, small universities, track. Some of the universities were definitely. I probably could have went a track scholarship to some of the smaller schools in Louisiana. As a sprinter, I was actually, if I hadn't put in so much muscle, I probably could have became a 7-foot high jumper. I was a 6'6" high jumper in high school. So those things, and then of course, being able to do multiple things, possibly the decathlon as an athlete in college could have been some of those things because basically 400 meters, coach actually forced me into certain things that I didn't want to do, but it would actually generate points for the team, so I did them.
A team player.
So I actually played all 4 sports in high school, which was kind of weird for some students because in the middle of a baseball game, I would actually leave and have my track uniform under my baseball uniform to go and run in a track meet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, really.
Pretty impressive. Marnie, jump on.
Oh.
Well, so Liffort, what about your family life growing up in Shreveport? What about your mom and your dad or your siblings? Were they athletes too, or how did this whole thing start?
Well, I learned a lot of the sports athletics from my brothers, older brothers and sisters. Basically, I'm the baby of 7 of my mom kids and a baby of a total of 18 children, combined with the 2 parents. My mom and dad were separated majority of my childhood, but they didn't live far apart. So they both played a big role in my life in regards to me having access to both parents. And that was important to have that, knowing that I had that available and having a mother who basically had values. I was a church-going young man from a little boy till I was a college student. So that was a every Sunday task that I had to achieve and be a part of, which made a big difference in my life because I actually started out, unfortunately, it was actually at the end became fortunate. My oldest son was born to me as a high school student. Unfortunately, my late oldest son. But I learned a valuable lesson that, hey, there's a lot more to life than at the point of trying to be a father too early. And then, of course, continuing on to take on that role later on as a college student and having the ability to support along the way the mother and then, of course, the child as well. And having a support system of our parents helping out and grandparents helping out as well.
So, well, and that's an incredible story. When you look at today's athletes or today's college stars, what are your, how would you coach them? What advice would you pass on to them?
Well, first thing first, that the part of your life where you're actually enjoying is the student part of your life, being a student first. And a lot of kids will see that these flashy guys, these flashy roles that professional athletes have. They'll hear, but today you hear a lot of professional athletes on the different platforms, Instagrams, podcasts, talking. If they'll listen, they'll learn because a lot of these guys are actually telling them their story on how everyone becomes your friend when you're popular, when you have a lot of money. But when all of that excitement goes away, are they still around? Are they still with you? Are they still the friends that they say they were? Do you still have the access to the people that you've helped along the way? And are your family members still loving you as much as they did when you were carrying majority of them. Fortunately for me, I say fortunate, but unfortunate for us as players back in the 70s and 80s, we are probably, I would say, funds the money that is different today than it was then, but it was still 6-7 figures regardless. You were still making more than the average Joe. So having the ability to adapt and continue to understand that it's not the money, it's what you do with it during the time you have it. And then, of course, building a life for yourself after you leave the sport. Because that's the struggle. It's real that a lot of guys struggle to leave the sport and move on to a different lifestyle. And they get angry because they had to leave the sport. It's a game that's built for a short-term life. Mm-hmm. And any professional sport is built for a short-term life. So take advantage of every situation and don't dabble into things you don't know about, because as I see, financial literacy is a big issue when it comes to professional athletes. There were classes available that everyone had access to in college, economics, high school, college. You had the same opportunities if you choose to use it in the fashion that everyone else that's not playing professional football, that actually takes a different role, you had access, the same access that the regular students had. So we can't make excuses that the university didn't provide financial literacy courses, because those universities provide the courses that are available, which are, where do you want to go? Do you want to be a financial analyst? Do you want to be an economic advisor? You want to be a teacher? Then, of course, you have to make that choice. Or you just there to use the university as a stepping stone to get to the next level of the professional sport.
So what did you study at LSU?
Sorry, go, Marjorie. Yes, all you.
Okay, just real quickly, what did you study at LSU?
I started out in journalism. I didn't finish my undergrad degree at LSU. Mm-hmm. I went through the 4 years of the process. I changed curriculums twice. In my lifetime, I know my background as a humanitarian, and if I ever decide to get my undergrad degree online, the NFL pays for it. I don't see why I have the time to do it. It's just the ability to set aside the time for myself to go back and put in 50 hours of online study to get my degree as an LSU undergrad student. But with that said, I continued my education through universities in Miami while I was playing. And basically, the reason I did so is because I wanted to move out of football into something different once I left the NFL. And I was a student at St. Thomas University for 2 years. I was a student at Nova University when we moved our training camp to Nova for 2 years. And of course, that 2-year period was during the period I became a student at Nova, was at the end of my football career when I became the player program coordinator for the Miami Dolphins.
So, circling back then, Marnie, why don't you go ahead and take it and we'll circle back after.
Well, no, I was just going to ask, so Liffort, how did you get involved? When did you decide that you wanted to be a part of being in charge of the NFL alumni in the Dallas-Fort Worth area? How did that come to you?
I was actually involved with our organization in Miami as a employee of the Miami Dolphins. I was a part of I'm a part of the NFLPA Retired Players Association as well. I get an opportunity to work with several of our brands, the Trust. I'm one of our Legends leaders in the community as well. So we have multiple groups that we actually cater to. We have our Pro Football Players Foundation, which is an association that provides two products to every former player that played 2 years or more. Vision, great glasses, huh? So these glasses come through a group of guys that got together, former players, that created this environment, this business, nonprofit organization that provides vision and dental to every player that played 2 years or more with no overhead, no copay. You get your teeth cleaned twice a year, and there's no fees. The trust provides educational tools to each and every player, financial literacy courses, and then of course that challenge to go back to school to finish your undergrad degree is what the trust provides, which is the financial backing to do that, which offers out $20,000 to $25,000 per semester to former players to go back and get their degree at the existing university or any other university that would be an option for any of us. And then, of course, the NFLPA, Retired Players Association, that's the step down from the union version of our organization. I helped start the first chapter in South Florida as an employee of the Miami Dolphins after I retired. That was a great milestone because it gave the former players an opportunity to collaborate and get together and start doing things in the community. The NFL alumni has been around since 1966, 1965, and I was a part of that organization right off the football field with so many influences from my former Miami Dolphins, the 72 Dolphins, and the players to follow basically led the way there. So that organization, being a total nonprofit, put the light on everything that I actually did in the community as a current player, which gave me an opportunity to jump right in a seat and become one of the officers of that organization and in a secretarial role, and help them raise funds for nonprofits all over the community in South Florida, all the way up through the northern part of South Florida. So I basically, it was a challenge. And then, of course, when I stepped away for a while, being out of the country, when I moved here to Dallas, I wasn't involved when I first got here. I was actually working head down in the software industry. So it was a market that needed a lot of attention. So I worked with CPAs and large accounting firms, from audit to tax, to mergers and acquisitions, basically helping those firms pick the right tools for their employees to operate on a high level. So being in that industry for a long time, Beasley Reese was the NFL alumni CEO, and he's in this environment. He lives here in the Dallas, Texas area. He's a Waco guy, basically. And he actually approached me and asked 8 years ago if I would actually take a presidential role with the NFL alumni chapter here because they were struggling. As I said to him, and I really didn't know that they were having a rough time. I knew of the organization being here, but I thought they had great leadership, basically already. And I didn't know that they were struggling financially. So I stepped in and I took over from one of the former players who was a Cardinal alumni, such as I am as well, St. Louis Cardinal alumni. And since then, I basically took the role that we could actually activate players in a community to be present and at all times to help kids and step into roles as leaders, step into roles as people that are visible in the community, that we can actually help develop these young men and women into better people than we would see every day in our communities that we grew up in. So after 8 years, I've been, basically I'm the Dallas chapter president, but I'm also responsible for North Louisiana and the state of Arkansas. Prior to 4 years ago, Oklahoma was my state as well. So I had a lot of territory to cover. So I am convinced the organization that Oklahoma, with over 1,000 former NFL players living in that state, they could actually host to have their own chapter, which they do now, led by one of my Dolphin alumni and Cowboy alumni, Ricky Brady.
Very interesting. Let me ask you this. You're talking about youth and all that you continue to do. And again, with your, with the NFL Players Association and everything, I just wondered if there were three things. You grew up, you said you had 17 or 18 brothers and sisters and what have you, all that I, only can imagine what you learned from one another. And I just wondered, now as you try to make a difference in our future generation and the youth of our country and of our great state here, what are three things? I'm just kind of curious, with all the things that you've done and all the things that you continue to be a part of, what three things come to mind that you want to make sure you always?
Several of my brothers were. I had one of my older brothers. He was in the Air Force.
Okay.
And then, of course, he left the Air Force. He worked for the police department in Houston, so police officer. One of my brothers is a Marine. He was one of my older brothers who was a Marine. And then, of course, I had another brother who spent 15 years in the Army. So I learned a lot from those three in regards to when I thought about before my senior year in high school, I thought about going to the service, and all three of them said, "Oh no, you're not going to the service. You're going to college," and didn't realize the tools that I had in regards to how do I get to college. And all of a sudden, I found out from my high school coach that all of these schools were interested in Liffort Hobley, and I had no idea. I was blind about, opportunities, because I grew up in a neighborhood where a majority of the guys that were better athletes than I was, they actually had full-time jobs at 19 years old. And we're talking about getting married at 20. So that's what I knew until I stepped outside of my family and I stepped outside of my environment. So those are the things. And then, of course, learning a lot of those things from influences from outside of my family that I mentioned in the beginning.
Right. Very interesting. Marnie, jump on.
Well, wait, Marjorie, I interrupted you before. Do you have something for
Well-
Liffort, or can I just yes.
I was just going to circle back. He had mentioned, Liffort, you mentioned that you worked for the Dolphins after your playing days, and at one point you said that was pretty interesting. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, being a player program coordinator was a position that was actually held by our CFO, Jill Strafasi. And she was actually, basically, she wasn't overwhelmed, but, to wear two hats as an employee of a professional football team, being the CFO is already a burden. So to do both of those things, while I was a player 2 years before I retired, Jill and I would talk a lot. She would ask me to engage some of the players because she wanted to start meetings after practice. And a lot of the guys they just blew it off. And of course, I would actually get in the locker room and say, "Hey guys, Jill Strafasi has this financial meeting she'd like for us to attend," and basically introduce a lot of the guys to, "Hey, look, this is an opportunity for you to learn about how to maintain your wealth." And, guys blew it off because they were hearing it from someone that was coming from the front office. So in going into my last year, I got injured after the sixth game of the season. Unfortunately, I was put on injury reserve. I was ready to play 2 weeks later. But unfortunately, coach made a decision to put me on injury reserve. So I ended up doing some things with Jill, basically helping to organize some of those after practice meetings on Tuesdays or Wednesdays or Thursdays, which were short days. Tuesdays and Thursdays usually short days. Tuesdays were off days. Thursdays we'd have a meeting after practice. And once I took the role, I made it mandatory for rookies to basically to actually come to the meetings, because I brought in professors from University of Miami, FIU, FAU. They were already from the financial market. They didn't have, basically they had the skill set to teach and give guys the information they needed without having any influence or any relationships with a third party that they were going to introduce the player to. You had to make your own decision on what company you wanted to work with based on the information you received. So once I took on that role, I made it mandatory for rookies to show up at my meetings on Thursday afternoon. And the way I actually got my former teammates that were veteran players to show up, I invited their wives. So after practice, instead of you going there for a beer or two with your buddy, you were actually met at the front door by your wife and you came to my meeting.
Smart. So you have natural leadership skills. Did you also use those skills while you were on the field?
I did. I was actually, I was fortunate enough to play for a great coach and two great coaches. My coach at LSU, Jerry Stovall, great coach, and then was actually let go in my third year. My senior year, I had the ability and privilege to work with Bill Unsbarger, who was the Dolphins defensive coordinator for 28, 29 years. He was that guy that actually would coach the team to an undefeated season and was, basically had put together a defense that put him in a Super Bowl 3 years in a row. So having the ability to work with that gentleman, my senior year as a LSU Tiger, I learned more from him that 1 year, and I can say I did have 4 defensive coordinators throughout my college career. So I played 4 different defenses in 4 years of my career. So that basically, I was a captain for 2 seasons at LSU, my junior and senior year, which is usually not something that happens, but I was a team captain 2 times my junior and senior year for LSU. I was a special team captains for the Miami Dolphins multiple years during my career. So it gave me an opportunity to step in a leadership role, basically, even after my career was over.
Well, I'm not surprised because you do sound like a natural leader.
Yeah, I would agree. How many kids? I
had fun doing it.
How many kids did you say you have?
There was my firstborn. It's Liffort Hobley. She drowned at 5 years old. My firstborn son, Marcus, he unfortunately his life was taken at 27 years old. And then, of course, I have Liffort II. He's just turned 40 this year. He's going to be he's moving to, I believe, LA in a couple of months to take on a job there. And then, of course, my daughter, Lindsay, she's here with me. I'm actually sitting at her dining room table doing this interview. And my son, Lucas, who's 22, who has started his college career at Texas State University. And now that was during a pandemic. Unfortunately, that didn't work out too well. Bad decision on our part as a family together. But he's trying to decide what he wants to do as a young man. So we're giving him as much room to make that decision as possible.
Well, obviously, we're all sorry that the loss of your 2 children, but it sounds like the other 3 are focused in the right direction and probably in great part thanks to you. And is your one daughter there? Would she like to say hello to us, or is she not powdered up?
She's at work. She's actually she's working today.
Oh, she's not there.
She's an LN. She works for the resource center over in Arlington as a LN. She's in the elder care.
Very nice.
Wonderful.
So she's servicing, just like I'm taking care of her kids, she's taking care of grandparents of other families as we speak.
Well, she got the gene, huh? She picked up your gene.
Yes, she does. She has the humanitarian gene for sure.
Oh, that's great. The Hobley gene.
Yes,
That's great.
right.
All right, Marnie, jump on.
Well, so Liffort, we know you have some grandkids and some great grandkids. What do you think, they're gonna, when they think about their grandfather and their great grandfather, what do they think about you? Like, what are their thoughts about how great you are to them, but what are their thoughts about you?
And what's your name
Well,
also, before you answer that, what's your name as a grandfather?
Oh, Grandpa, for Miss Divine sitting right here counting money. She calls me Grandpa. My grandson, he calls me Pawpaw, and my other two, my great grandkids. I'm still waiting for them to actually pick a name for me. So let's see what happens.
That's great. I was just curious. We'll go ahead and answer Marnie's question.
Well, Marnie, if you, I would probably say the influence on a lot of the kids and the grandkids is the history. Once they actually start to learn about, their grandfather and, basically my son, Lucas, he grew up, never wanting to play football and never did. So it was one of those things that he chose a different lifestyle than my other kids. My son, Liffort, he actually tried to play football, but he realized that I'm actually faster on the track than I am on the football field. So he was a track star. I think today, if my daughter hadn't hurt her knee, she probably would have played in a women's football league, because she's that tough girl that probably would play football in the WNFC league if she had an opportunity and didn't. She actually injured her knee about 2 years ago playing I think she was playing kickball. And I said, I don't know if you would have made it on the football field just getting injured in a kickball game, but she's pretty tough. But my other kids will probably be influenced by other things that I actually do. For instance, what I do in the community. I think they like actually being with me. I took them to one of my football camps about a month ago at Texas Wesleyan. And my grandson was there, and my granddaughter was there. They sat and watched and listened to, talked to high school students. We went out on the field. They got to watch me, basically work with the kids. And then, of course, back inside to talk to the kids again. So I think they liked that part of it. They enjoyed being there. And my grandson, he's not interested in football. He actually went through the first T program this year. He enjoyed that. And I think he'll enjoy soccer and other sports until he gets a little older, to see if he actually, it's not going to be forced upon him. It's your choice. I had to make the choice as a young man at 8 to 10 years old, what sports I wanted to participate in. Fortunate for me, I was actually pretty good at all of them, so I participated in all of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's great
So,
stuff.
Marnie, there's going to be an opportunity for them to make those choices themselves. I actually have a family member, a nephew, that's right now in the New York Giants camp, Elijah Chapman, who was a star at SMU right here in the Dallas area. He's a defensive tackle, basically, and I think he's got a great shot to make the team up there in New York, coached by one of my teammates, Brian Cox. He's the New York Giants' defensive line coach.
Very cool. Very cool. Let me ask you this.
That's very exciting.
Yeah, it is. Very exciting. I agree. We've just got a couple of minutes left. Where does it? I remember when I first met you, I was told I said, well, yeah, I know who Liffort is, but I always wondered where you got your name. Is that come from anything in particular? Where does Liffort mean? Where did that come from?
It's not a family name, believe it or not. I had to do a lot of research, and I'm not sure where my mom got that from. But I'm looking back and I'm going, Mom, you gave all of my brothers and sisters biblical names, and here I am with the baby with Liffort. So I actually did a little research. I am named after a town in Ireland.
Really?
Is that why you're wearing a green shirt?
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I tell you what.
I was playing golf. I was playing golf at Whitestone during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I'm playing with these two guys from out of town. I didn't know them.
Right.
So I introduced myself to one of the gentlemen. I said, Liffort Hobley. And he said, he said something that I'm not going to say on camera. He said, you got to be, I said, what do you mean? He said, I'm from the town of Liffort.
Oh,
no kidding. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
I said, oh my goodness, small world.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious.
He's from Ireland. He's from the town of Liffort.
Yeah.
I went, oh, wow.
That's great stuff. Well, keep your answers short on what I'm about to ask, because we're about ready to wrap up. But all the wonderful things you continue to do, you really are a difference maker. And we just simply say thank you for all you continue to do. But I just wondered, your legacy someday, what is it that you hope to be remembered? Certainly as a football player and all those wonderful things in the NFL. But I mean, over and above that, what would you like your legacy to be? How do you want people to remember you best?
Well, I would like for people to remember that they can actually take on the same role I took on in regards to people, family, and then, of course, having the ability to meet people at where they are, regardless of who they are and what they stand for. Meet them where they are and basically look for the best in others as you look for the best in yourself.
Oh, incredible.
Wonderful.
Great advice. Great advice for sure. And you continue to follow your own advice, thankfully. So thanks for all you continue to do, my friend. Really, it's above and beyond. Marnie, one quick question or anything you'd like to share as we wrap it up?
Thank you, Liffort. I mean, Liffort is certainly his career in obviously college and then the pros is the kind of guy that you want on your team, because he's the guy that says, I got it, I'll do it, whatever it is. And that's why we all love you, Liffort, and you make a difference in the community. And so thank you for doing that. And that's why you're babysitting right now, because you're not going to say no to your daughter. She's like, Dad, I need you. You're like, I got it. Don't worry. Just go.
Exactly.
People that can do that, they're such a breath of fresh air when you're around people that say, I got it. You go do whatever it is. I got it. That is a huge blessing. So bravo to you. Thank you, Liffort.
I thank you. I'm glad God gave me the ability to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Marjorie, how about you? Any
well, this has
closing
been
thoughts?
great. Thank you so much for joining us and for your sharing your story with us. I think it's been a real pleasure, and I'm just really blown away by all the things that you've done and your leadership skills and how you change lives. So thank you so much, Liffort.
Deeply appreciate it, and I'm not done yet.
That's right. That's
All
right.
right. Well, I tell you what,
Absolutely not.
we have 1 minute left. So you tell us in that 1 minute what's left to be done.
Well, this year I'm working on the our NFL alumni golf tournament. Hopefully I can find a title sponsor before the end of December, and we can do it this year. If not, we'll push it into next year. There's a lot of other different events that the NFL alumni will get involved with throughout the year. We work with Forest Hill. We do a toy drive and a kids event every December. I've been working with the mayor for the past couple of years over there with Norm Boulash and a few other of the former players that are recognized in the community. So all of those things. And then, of course, getting the guys out into the school systems so we can actually get players telling their stories to young men and women at the school level, at the elementary school level, at the middle school level, and at the high school level. Those are the things I'd like to achieve. We build those relationships with the school boards in Dallas and in Fort Worth, so let's use them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I tell you what,
it
does. Margie just said it sounds great, and indeed it does. Indeed it does. So we can't thank you enough. Marnie, thanks for grabbing this guy and getting him on the air. And by the way, give me a call. I might have a couple of opportunities for you to help you out with the golf tournament that you had in mind coming up in December.
I deeply appreciate that, Scott.
No problem. And for Marjorie as well, I tell you what, Liffort, we can't thank you enough for stopping by today. You've just been great, and you continue to be, even more importantly than the football player you were in the NFL, continue to be a difference maker, and it doesn't get much better than that. So thank you, my friend. Stay well.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot.
And thanks to all
Thank you,
our
Liffort.
listeners, our viewers, and what have you. And the name of the program, Journey Through Sports and Life. Till next time, from Marnie and Marjorie, I'm Scott. Don't forget, stay well and be safe.